Today I'd like for us to think about our worldview. So what is a worldview? The worldview is your overall perspective by which you see and interpret the world. It is the basic beliefs that you hold by which you interpret everything and by which you understand reality. It is the way you think things work in a big picture way. Most of us probably don't think a lot about our worldview. We've probably never really thought about our overall perspective about the way things are. It's just not part of our daily lives to think about stuff like that. But even though we might not consciously think of it, every one of us has those beliefs in the back of our mind back there. It is the set of beliefs by which we interpret the world. Our worldview is in the back of our mind and determines the way we look at things. It dictates how we understand and relate to the world and the things that happen. So think for a minute. What is the basic, fundamental perspective through which you understand things? The basic, most basic, fundamental perspective by which you understand things. What are the most basic beliefs you hold that cause you to think about things the way you do? What are your basic beliefs about why things are the way they are and why things work the way they do? At least for me, those are hard to come up with. It's hard to put it in words. It's hard to even form your thoughts about it. When I was working on this initially, I sat down and tried to do that. And I found it was impossible. I could not put all of those beliefs into words. I could not organize them. But I knew they're there somewhere in my mind. The reason I started thinking about worldview, it was a few weeks ago, it was in the context of something that I read in the news. I do not watch the news. I spend about 30 seconds reading the Shelby Star. I read a couple of headlines in the obituaries, and that's it. I used to read the comics until they COVIDized them back last year, and I quit reading those. So I don't pay attention to most of the news, but there's a few things I do pay attention to, and one of them is UFOs. And most of you know that already because we've talked about it before. Now, several weeks ago, the Navy confirmed as genuine yet another video of multiple UFOs taken from a Navy destroyer at sea. They confirmed as genuine 3 pictures of a UFO taken from another Navy ship, and they confirmed as genuine photos taken from a fighter jet of yet another UFO. They also released the details from the logs of 3 other Navy warships that had had encounters with objects. Now this is in addition to a couple of years ago, the Navy confirming that 3 videos of unidentified objects were in fact genuine. And in addition, the outgoing Chief of National Security has stated the government is preparing a report and will soon release it that outlines many other military sightings of unidentified objects, and these are objects that were detected by more than one means, including satellite imagery. According to a federal law passed last year with broad bipartisan support and signed into law by the President, the Pentagon is required this year to release a report that will attempt to address the security threat that these objects, whatever they may be, might pose. Now this has been reported across the major news outlets. It's not just something from a fringe group. And as luck would have it, just this past week, another video surfaced that the Navy confirmed was in fact genuine. It shows a spherical object about 6 feet in diameter flying through the air and then popping into the water. It didn't land in the water. It flies at ultra high speeds and then shoo, it just goes in there. And the Navy confirmed that's genuine. Now, what got me thinking about worldview in connection with all that is that in the context of all these releases that have happened in the past few weeks, some of the officials commented that the movements these objects make are unexplainable. In other words, our understanding of science says that these movements are impossible. That makes the way we'd like to explain them untenable. In the past, we said, well, China's got some new technology, and that's what this is. But the movements these things making don't represent a new technology. They represent something that our understanding of science says is impossible. They violate the laws of physics, in other words. But yet they're apparently doing it. Now, sightings of these objects are nothing new. They've been sighted back at least as far back as World War II. The only thing new is they are now being taken seriously. For decades, UFOs were seen as something only a few fringe-type people would believe in, a few crazies, people who believe in conspiracy theories, you know. That's how we used to put down those people. Stay away from him, he believes in UFOs and conspiracy theories. Intelligent, respectable people were not interested in stuff like that. But these reports of UFOs are harder to dismiss. There is video and other hard evidence of them that is coming directly from the United States military. What's most disturbing about these things, though, is that they are doing things that, according to science as we know it, says are impossible. So think of the ramifications for that. If these things do exist, and it's looking more likely that they do, there will be no alternative but to conclude that science, as we understand it, is wrong. Our understanding of science does not accurately describe the way things really work. And if that turns out to be the case, we will have no choice but to revise our worldview. Because when you get right down to it, our worldview is science. Even though we may be Christians, our worldview is not the Bible and not Christianity. Our worldview is science. Now, most of us learned about the basics of this worldview in grammar school. I can remember how they showed us these things that like Tinker Toys, and this stuff clumped in the middle were protons and neutrons, and on the little sticks sticking out, there were the electrons, and we were told everything that exists is made up of these little things. And we were told that these little protons, neutrons, and electrons were made up of something they called atomic matter. They didn't know what that was, but they said it was there, and they said that atomic matter is something so hard it can't be broken down into anything smaller. It's the basic unit, the basic block of which everyone is made, and we were told that all these little things obey natural laws, the laws of physics. And that's how we were taught the world works. Everything's made up of atoms, which themselves are made up of little atomic particles that always obey the laws of physics. This is what is known as materialism, the belief that everything that exists is made up of hard stuff. Materialism says everything that exists is made up of these little particles. And remember I said the word everything. So materialism says nothing exists that is not made up of those particles. And they always obey the laws of physics. You see, materialism is a worldview because it's a way of looking at reality. Everything that exists is made up of atoms. If it ain't made up of atoms, it does not exist. Now, the basics of this worldview were formulated beginning in the 1400s during the Renaissance. It is hard to overstate the influence these ideas had on Christianity. Christians left the worldview of the New Testament behind and adopted the worldview of materialism. Christianity changed dramatically as Christians reinterpreted Christianity to conform to materialism. It's interesting to go back and see what a big difference all that made. Now, if you go to the New Testament, especially passages like we heard today for our New Testament reading, you'll see mention of things like principalities and powers, the elementals, the powers of the air. You'll see mention of demons and angels. The worldview of the New Testament times was that the universe is ruled and governed by a host of what we would call spiritual entities. These things were everywhere, even here on earth. We couldn't necessarily see them with our human senses, but they were there. They did things, and they exerted influence on things on earth. In fact, they ruled things on earth. They were real powers that could do real things. We might call them spiritual powers, but that almost makes us seem like we're implying that the people back then thought they were ghosts. And that's not in the least what people back then thought. People thought them to be real creatures, real beings with bodies, just not physical bodies like we have, and not bodies our human senses can detect. They were seen as supernatural beings. That means beings that exist outside and independent of the natural world. And they have powers that violate or go beyond the natural forces we observe in the world. A supernatural being is not a ghost. It is a being that is not bound to the physical universe. It transcends the natural world. Now, that view of the world, full of and controlled of various supernatural beings, was the main view of the world that was in ancient Christianity. And it was the main view of the world that continued on up through medieval times. In medieval times, there was the idea that there were all sorts of supernatural beings. Demons, debooks, goblins, golems, elves, ebers, all sorts of fairies, djinns. There were various supernatural animals believed to exist, and a host of other supernatural beings that just controlled the world. Medieval people saw the world as teeming with these spiritual entities that exerted a real influence on things. With the beginning of the Renaissance, however, we find the beginning of modern science. And science led to the development of what is called the closed world idea. The closed world idea is one of the fundamental assumptions on which modern science is based, and it soon became a fundamental belief underlying everyone's worldview. The closed world idea says that everything that is true is known to be true, and what is not known to be true is false. I'm going to repeat that. Everything that is true is known to be true. Everything that is not known to be true is false. In other words, it is the idea that what cannot be proven by science as true is not true. What science cannot prove does not exist. If science cannot detect and prove something, it does not exist. It is the belief, in other words, that science sees and understands it all. As that became the accepted view in the world, it created problems for Christianity, because people had this worldview that if science can't detect it and prove it, it doesn't exist. And here was Christianity with all these supernatural beings going on, and of course science can't prove any of those. So if Christianity stuck with those beliefs, it's false. Science has proven Christianity to be false. And so as the closed world ideas gradually took over, belief in supernatural beings and supernatural powers gradually began declining in Christianity. By the time of the Protestant Reformation, we find a very sanitized version of Christianity. And if you grew up in a Protestant church, you grew up in a sanitized version of Christianity, cleared of any supernatural power other than the power of God Himself. It was a Christianity reinterpreted and designed to work as well as possible with the closed world idea that science could know it all. Now, of course, if you followed the closed world idea completely, you'd have to take God out of the picture, but if you did that, you couldn't have much Christianity. But Christianity found it could come close. It could go back to the New Testament and translate all these references to spiritual powers out of the picture and say that when the Bible talks of principalities and powers, when it talks about the powers of the air and this, that, and the other, it's talking about things like oppressive human regimes, human oppression, injustice, and things like that. And then Christianity could see God in a different way. Christianity could begin to see God as the source, or the first cause. Christianity could see God as a force, a principle, the ground of existence, or whatever, that initially set things in motion. Christianity could say that God set things in motion to work according to physical laws and then withdrew, and all God ever did basically was set things up to work automatically. And in this view, of course, there is no need for any supernatural agency in the world. It just runs automatically according to the laws of physics. And this is basically what modern Christianity has morphed into little by little over several hundred years. And that is the basis of Christianity as we were taught it, and it is the basis of the worldview that we were taught. You know, when you think about that, it's a very lonely worldview. It's a worldview that says basically there's just us and God. And that's the way I think most of us have grown up thinking of things. There's human beings and God. The universe is very small. It's us human beings down here on earth, and then it's God up in heaven, and that's all there is anywhere. Oh, there's a few angels up in heaven, maybe. But they're just a few of them, and they're up there. So the worldview of Christianity as we inherited it is just us and God. That's a very small universe. It's a two-power universe. There's the power of God, which was limited to setting things in motion whenever you want to say he did that. And then there's the power of human beings here on earth, and that's it. That's all there is anywhere. Just us and God. Now, the way this version of Christianity sees it, it is science's task to investigate and discover the laws of physics by which God set things up to work. And if we do that, we have discovered truth with a capital T. The modern view, according to the closed world idea, is that the laws of physics rule the universe. There is no influence on anything in the universe other than the laws of physics. There is nothing in the universe that operates outside the laws of physics. There are no supernatural forces in the universe at all. And there is nothing in existence except what is composed of atoms. If it ain't composed of atoms, it does not exist. And what science cannot prove to exist does not exist. There is no better illustration of that idea than modern medicine. When Christians get sick, we turn to modern medicine for help. Now, we might pray, but chances are we'll pray for God to work through the doctors. We don't really expect to be healed by the power of God. We're on the phone trees of several churches in our area. They're always calling, wanting you to pray for somebody, as if they think somebody's going to get healed by prayer. They don't. What they're wanting you to pray for is that the doctors will heal them. We don't expect anyone to be healed except through drugs, surgery, treatments, or something, and we say God works through that. Why do we say God works through that? Well, it's an illustration of how we believe that everything is physical, that everything that exists is composed of atoms. When we get sick, we turn to medicine. We turn to doctors to manipulate the atoms to make us better. And if we get better, we'll see the power of God in there, that God worked through the medicine. But that's the materialistic closed world idea right there. The closed world idea became the modern worldview. It became the perspective by which people today understand things and the way we think the world works. And frankly, we've been very comfortable with that. Our scientific worldview has been able to explain a lot of things. And our scientific worldview has led to a lot of what we thought at least was progress. And our scientific worldview has at least temporarily seemed to make people's lives better. It has led to what we consider to be advances. It's easy to see how we'd fall for that idea. The idea that what we can scientifically prove represents all that there is. The idea that science is truth with a capital T. We had it all figured out. We finally figured out how things work. We're sure. And then here come these unknown objects zipping around Navy ships and planes, popping in and out of the water at ultra high speeds. accelerating to many times the speed of sound in an instant, turning in mid-flight without ever stopping, no flight control surfaces. If these things do turn out to be real, that will necessarily mean our whole house of cards we constructed for the past 600 years on science was wrong. The science that we thought had the complete and total answer to everything will turn out to be wrong. And what's going to come down when that house of cards comes down? Our entire worldview, because that's what our worldview is based on. You see what's at stake here with these unexplained objects in the sky and in the water? It's not just that there may be things in the universe we didn't know existed. That's about nowhere near the biggest thing that's at stake. What's at stake is that we thought we had it all figured out, that we knew it all. And if these things turn out to be real, that will all come crashing down. Our whole idea of reality, our whole idea of the way things work that we have built on science will come crashing down. And that's why for so many years people would not believe things like this exist. They wouldn't even consider that they might exist. They had to be either a figment of someone's imagination, either a misinterpretation of some natural phenomenon, or an outright hoax. They had to be. You see, they had to be, because our whole worldview depended on them not being real. If they're real, it all comes crashing down like a house of cards. The whole worldview we spent 600 years developing comes crashing down. I don't know what these objects are, but I will admit that as a Christian minister, I'm really glad to see them come up. Because I do not accept the closed world idea. I do not accept the view that if science can't prove something, it is not true. I am not going to let some scientist sit there and tell me I'm a fool for believing in God. I don't accept the idea that science is truth with a capital T. I accept the idea that this is truth with a capital T. And if they don't agree with this, they can change theirs. I'm not changing this. This idea that science is truth with a capital T has caused a lot of people to reject Christianity. It has led a lot of people away from Christianity, and it has caused Christianity to make changes to itself that never should have been made. The idea that science is truth with a capital T has been a very destructive idea, and I, for one, will be glad to see it knocked down a notch. Because in my job as a Christian minister, I have seen how destructive that idea has been. We could truly be on the cusp of something that would, in a very short time, change our entire view of the way things work. If that does happen, it wouldn't surprise me if things went back closer to the New Testament worldview. That there are all kinds of spiritual powers that are not bound by the laws of physics, that rule things on earth and that influence things here on earth. Maybe it will turn out that the New Testament worldview was a lot closer to truth than we ever got with science. Maybe it will turn out that science actually led us farther away from truth, that it was actually a deceiver. You know, maybe it's not just us and God. Maybe the laws of physics we developed over the past 600 years are not ironclad rules that govern everything. Maybe things work very differently than we thought. Maybe it was science that was masquerading as truth. Maybe the old ideas from the New Testament about principalities and powers, about the elementals, and about the powers of the air are a lot closer to the way things actually are than we ever imagined. We could truly be a generation in which our understanding will change drastically.